Campaign group More in Common conducts regular focus groups with voters in swing or volatile areas. This week they went to the constituency of Blackpool South, and they were kind enough to invite T&G to listen in. The Lancashire seaside resort town is statistically the most deprived place in England, registering 435th out of 435. It's also a red wall seat that the Tories turned blue at the 2019 general election, so perhaps a great place to gauge the current mood about Boris Johnson and his government post all those Partygate revelations. Joining us to discuss their views is Luke Tryl, who is the UK director of More in Common and also led that focus group. Luke, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for inviting us along. I found it absolutely intriguing. It always is, quite frankly, when you listen to real voters rather than the Westminster babble, as we all like to do. So, Luke, let's go through some of these clips. You first asked those 6 representatively selected voters, 2 Labour, 4 Tory, about the Partygate scandal, what they thought of it, and whether it's changed their view of the Prime Minister. So let's listen to how they responded.
I'll be quite honest. It doesn't. It should bother me more, but it really doesn't. It's more comical. It's just laughable that he would do such a stupid thing, and I find it hard to get myself wound up because it's all a game. They're all. I don't know why people expect them to behave any different. They're just, they shouldn't have done it. But I'm not losing any sleep over it, to be fair. But, they've told us to do the right thing and we've done it. So at least we can be proud. Most of the people in the UK can be proud of themselves, at least. So, and at least they gave the right advice at the right time. As I say, it doesn't bother as much as it probably should because I don't expect any better from any of them.
I know we all have to follow the rules and regulations. They're no different. But after what he's brought the country through, from Brexit and the COVID, no other Prime Minister has had to deal with a pandemic like he's had to deal with. And I think it's a witch hunt.
I understand what Mark was saying. No matter who was in the country, it's the first time we've experienced COVID and Brexit and all that. I understand that. But it's common courtesy to show manners of rules and stand by them, expecting the country to do it, but then you don't. I mean, that deserves a witch hunt, in my opinion.
If you were being asked, should Boris resign? Should he go over this? Who thinks that he should? 1 person there. Yeah, 2 there. And who thinks he shouldn't?
Yeah.
So 3 there. And Margaret, I haven't got anything from you.
I think he should stay.
Yeah, so most people think he should stay.
No, I'm not surprised. And no, it's not changed my opinion. I think he's got a hard job, He's the face of Great Britain, United Kingdom, England. He's standing up there and saying, this is what we're doing. We might all be laughing at him, but whoever is up there would be laughing at them. It's going to be the same situation.
I don't think it's changed my opinion of him as a person, because I have respect for what he's done for this country where, like people said, he's gone through Brexit, he's gone through, the whole pandemic now himself. I just, my only opinion of him that has changed is that I'm disappointed in, him having these lockdown parties. I mean, if it was recent, he's had these lockdown parties, it might be slightly different, but because he had them so close to the beginning of the start of the pandemic, it has changed, how I do slightly feel about him, but I don't see who else can run the country at the moment, because obviously when he came into power, it was him or was it Jeremy Corbyn? And I think, I would definitely have preferred Boris then. So
it shows that they've probably done it for years and years and years, done what they want, and we're getting these bumbling idiots like Boris who managed to become Prime Minister. But how can you compare Prime Ministers like that compared to ones in history? And you just think the world, like somebody said there off, that's the face of United Kingdom. Like, they must be laughing at us. They really, honestly, we're a joke. We really are a messed up government and a joke to the world.
I agree that he should hold his hands up and say, look, I'm sorry, I've made a mistake. We should have been following the rules like everybody else. But they all make mistakes, don't they?
No, they didn't make a mistake. They just got caught out. They knew exactly what they were doing. And unfortunately for me, being a primary school TA, I didn't know. Yes, you did. You've just been caught. I've just watched you do it. And like I said before, it's the same with the government. Take responsibility for your actions and be honest.
Well, Luke Tryl, the UK Director of More in Common, is with us. We'll pause the tape there, Luke, just on those reactions to Partygate. What was your response to hearing that? I mean, personally, I was probably a little bit surprised that, OK, there's frustration, they're angry at it, none of them like it. But, you know, you asked a direct question. Only 2 out of your 6 voters there think the Prime Minister should go for it.
Yeah, and my immediate reaction, having finished moderating the group, was that, you know, if Boris was listening in, he probably breathed a bit of a sigh of relief. I think what came across quite clearly was definitely disappointment, in some cases sort of incredulity and anger from the voters. But it was more a sense of, don't they all do this? Isn't what they all get up to? This is just politicians, they live on a different planet. And, you know, short term, probably good news for Boris that people are thinking that. Longer term, quite bad news for the state of our democracy, that you've got people who just sort of roll their eyes and say, well, of course they were breaking the rules. That's the sort of thing that they do. Do you think it's interesting that a couple of people sort of implied that actually what was making things worse were the excuses for the parties, or the I didn't realise it was a party, ambushed by a cape type thing, rather than the parties themselves? And it does perhaps suggest that the best path forward when the report is published, particularly with voters like this, will be a sort of hands up, we got things wrong, now let's move on to some of the serious stuff.
Yeah, that response, I think it was Debbie, wasn't it, who said, they're just like my primary school children who I teach. You know, they didn't make a mistake, they just got caught. And what I tell my children is, you've got to admit it, just come clean. We'll see, won't we, Luke? It's not necessarily how Boris Johnson's responded when he's been caught in the past on various bits and bobs. But I certainly agree. It does feel like it's all priced in. You know, that's what Westminster does. That's what happens. Not just if you elect Boris Johnson, but that's what they all do. Why should we ever expect any of them to keep their promises? I mean, Luke, I have to say, I found that fundamentally quite depressing.
Absolutely, but the sad thing to say, and it's, you know, why we do the work that we do, is it's not unique to this group. Lots of people outside of Westminster have kind of either switched off from politics or sort of despairing of the state of our political class, and this feeling that there is no accountability, that nothing will make a difference. You know, we who are interested, involved in politics, are really waiting for this Sue Gray report, but as you heard when we were listening to the group, that just wasn't there. They didn't expect that when this report comes out that it will change anything, that it will make anything different, because that's the way it always goes, and politicians follow their own rules. And it ties in very much with the polling, which we've done, which found that, I think it was quite extraordinary, polling at the end of last year found that nearly 80% of the country think that the system is rigged towards the rich and the powerful against ordinary people. And you really saw that coming through. And that's perhaps why it wasn't anger at Boris. It was just, you know, same old.
Yeah, indeed. Look, we'll come straight back to you, Luke. We're going to talk a little bit more that if Boris Johnson doesn't hang around, we'll ask the focus group, or we'll listen to their answers, who else. But we'll just take a quick break.
Mariella Frostrup, tomorrow afternoon from 1 on Times Radio.
How do you give meaning to loss in an age of unbelief? That's the question plaguing academic and one-time politician Michael Ignatieff as he discusses his new book On Consolation, Finding Solace in Dark Times. One man who might need a copy is the Prime Minister. We preview the week's political agenda with 2 Westminster insiders. And we explore how one man, posing as a billionaire on Tinder, was able to con women out of hundreds of thousands of dollars all over the world.
Mariella Frostrup, tomorrow afternoon from 1 on Times Radio. Times Radio with Tom Newton Dunn.
So we're with Luke Tryl, the UK Director of the More in Common pressure group. And Luke, you did a focus group. We sat on it. It's absolutely fascinating responses. Let's have a listen to what the response was when you ask your 6 voters in Blackpool South, if Boris Johnson just happens to fall off the end of a cliff, are they impressed by any alternatives out there who might take over as Prime Minister? First, let's hear what they made of Sir Keir Starmer.
I've only ever really seen him in Prime Minister's Question Time, in Parliament, and he never seems to say anything particularly constructive to me. He just wants to score points off the opposing party. He's got that forum where he can stand there and he can ask the Prime Minister absolutely anything. And he spent the entire length of time that he had just calling for his resignation and talking about parties and cracking jokes like he's a stand-up bloody comedian. It's just he's not that funny.
It seemed all right when he first was appointed, but as things gone on, I think that no, I've turned against him. I'm not keen on him. I certainly wouldn't vote for him.
I think that was Margaret. I got quite fond of Margaret, actually, and she had her strong views. Luke, you also asked them about possible leadership contenders on the Tory benches. So let's have a listen to what they had to say about first Rishi Sunak and then the Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss.
How many people know who that is in the group? Most people?
I haven't got a clue.
No, Margaret?
No, the name sounds... I've heard the name, but I couldn't tell you in what context.
Yeah. Debbie, have you heard of...
Doesn't he sort our money out and do the budget and stuff?
Mark?
Is he the Chancellor?
Sorry, he's the Chancellor of the Exchequer, isn't he?
Yeah. Well, have you got an opinion on him?
Not really. I haven't. No, I don't think I've really heard particularly great deal about. Maybe I've not listened to the correct news articles or whatever, or maybe I've purposely just watched the main attraction, rather than him. So yeah, nothing really. No opinions either way, really.
Doesn't he tend to keep himself out of the spotlight, which is potentially a good thing?
So another politician that some people talk about is someone called Liz Truss. Have any of you heard of her?
No.
Never heard of her.
No. That's fine. She's a foreign secretary, but no, on that. That's completely fine.
Look, I think you were a little bit surprised by those answers. That not one single one of them heard of Liz Truss. I think it may break Liz Truss's heart, who was on this programme just a couple of hours ago. But is that the reaction you get across the country? We all down in Westminster obviously know who the Foreign Secretary is, but it would really appear from those Blackpool South voters that she hasn't actually cut through yet.
No, and it's not a matter of having a bad opinion about Liz Truss. It's just that no one in the country outside of Westminster knows who she is. Obviously, the Ukraine crisis has her front and centre in terms of dealing with it, and things may change. It'll be interesting to monitor that. But at the moment, we tend to get a lot of blank faces when we test her name with focus groups. Which isn't the same with Rishi Sunak, which, again, you can probably understand having been the face, particularly of the furlough scheme. And a couple of the participants in the group mentioned the furlough scheme, both positive sense that it got us through the pandemic, but also those worries going forward about how we're going to pay it back. But I think in general, and we saw this in the group, what Boris is really benefiting from is that voters aren't looking around and thinking, wow, I'll take a bit of that instead. He's benefiting by being the person that people know who led us through the pandemic, got a lot of credit from that, and other people just aren't really cutting the mustard at the moment.
Okay, let's have a look at another subject that you spoke to the Blackpool South voters on, the cost of living crisis. It's obviously rocketing up the list of political concerns, spiralling inflation and a lot of bigger energy bills are cause of concern for a lot of people. Let's have a listen to some of their thoughts on that and also what they know about levelling up, the government's great transformation plan that we'll see a bit more of next week.
One of the things that this government was elected on was, in terms of giving back to areas, was this idea of something called levelling up. Have any of you heard of that?
No.
Who's nodding? I've got.
Yeah, I have. I
think so.
Is that bringing everyone in the country up to a certain standard of living, etc.?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, you've heard about it too, Debbie?
I think so, yeah. It rings a little bit of a bell. Yeah. I've noticed an increase in my food shop. I'm sure that was just little things. I bought a bag of Doritos before. They used to be £1. They're £1.25 now. And I know that's it's only 25p, but on everything, that's
25p.
Yeah.
it's just scary the amount of money we're paying, about 150, 160 quid a month now for gas and electric. And if it goes up more than that, it worries me as to where we're going to get the money from to pay for it, because, we've got all that. You've got people are saying food shopping, petrol is just ridiculous at the moment. It's just everything, they just don't understand what we spend a month on everything, kids' meals and stuff, and, getting the kids to school and that. The cost of living is it's not right at the moment at all.
I'm worried about that, obviously, because we all are, aren't we? My concern is for elderly people who are on a pension and they have a choice between heating and eating. And I just think that shouldn't happen to anybody.
So, Luke, obviously a lot of concern there. I mean, now, it shouldn't surprise us at all, should it really, that actual matters that really affect voters, like the price of their bills, does completely cut through, where perhaps Partygate might do less so.
Absolutely. And I think the message that I took from moderating that group in particular was that if the short term is good for Boris Johnson on Partygate, the government has some real challenges on the cost of living ahead. And already people were starting to talk about their energy supplier going under and what that meant for the future in terms of their bills, the cost of the weekly shop. And it was those very small things like Debbie talking about the price of a packet of crisps having gone up, and that really builds up over time. So real concern mixed with the fact that lots of them felt that politicians still didn't really get it either, that they didn't understand these pressures that they were facing. So I think what we're going to see from this group of voters and others in the Red Wall is real pressure to act on the cost of living, because people are starting to feel it, and they all have their own stories about the most vulnerable who are suffering the most as well.
And there was an interesting conversation, we haven't quite got time to play, sadly, about, and all the voters agreed with this, the idea of Westminster giving something back. We're all suffering. Why can't you lot take a pay cut and put all your vast Westminster salaries back into help the likes of us? I can't see that happening in a hurry, but certainly it's not going to do anything to change that culture of political anger, is it?
No, not at all. And it was really striking when I asked, as you said, what's the one thing the government could do to reset? It was put back. It was stop taking these salaries, stop taking these expenses. It was clear that, they had a view that politicians earned a lot and were living much nicer lifestyles as a result than they were, and they weren't giving back. But that's what they expect. They want politicians to sort of put the money where their mouth is. And the most dangerous thing, I think, for politicians and politics in general is that feeling of hypocrisy, that feeling that they're living on a different planet to the one we're living on. We're suffering, they're partying much more than the parties or the lockdown breaches themselves.
So, Luke, the final question you asked voters was how they're likely to vote in the next general election. And what was really interesting from that for me is, despite all the tumultuous times we've had over the last couple of years, all the Partygate headlines, actually there wasn't much change at all. One or two thinking, well, I haven't quite decided. I don't know. I'm a bit fed up with this, a bit fed up with that. But most of the six, I think it was 4 out of the 6, wasn't it, hadn't changed their minds. They're still going to vote Tory if they voted Tory. They'll still vote Labour if they voted Labour.
Absolutely. And again, it was clear that there really is some goodwill in the bank with this group of voters from having been seen to have delivered Brexit and from having managed the pandemic reasonably well. We heard a lot of, well, to be honest, who could have done anything differently? No one could have predicted a pandemic coming around the corner. And they're still willing to give the government credit for that. What will be interesting is if we move into this period with higher cost of living, with the national insurance rise, which we heard some quite mixed views about in the focus group, whether that starts to make people think, actually, I'm going to start looking elsewhere. And, that doesn't necessarily, as we know, mean one of the two main parties, whether there's an opportunity for a sort of Farage 14.0 reboot who taps into some of these concerns around cost of living and politicians being on another planet. That's something that we're going to have to watch, and that actually mainstream politicians might have to do more to act to address.
Well, that's obviously an absolutely fascinating point. Katie Balls, co-presenting with me today. Katie, does that surprise you, that final discovery from the voters, if you like, that after everything we've seen and done, talked about it the last sort of couple of years, and despite maybe where the opinion polls are, certainly the voters in Blackpool South have massively changed their affiliation?
Yeah, I think it is slightly surprising if you think about the mood music of recent weeks. And also, I think it is in particular in these swing seats where the Tories are going to be paying the most attention. I think that ultimately it's a low bar, but though that was a fairly good focus group in a way for Boris Johnson. What stands out to me as helping Boris Johnson is the fact that lots of those voters, that they are not particularly enamoured by Boris Johnson, if anything, the opposite, but they also have a negative view of Keir Starmer, actually see Keir Starmer as more opportunistic, don't like that. But then if I was Boris Johnson, I find it interesting that Rishi Sunak does have some name recognition. He is not an unknown like Liz Truss, but is fairly undecided what people think of him. Saying, oh, I've heard of him, but he keeps himself to himself. So there is probably an opportunity for that reset with someone like that.
So, Luke, there's a lot riding on levelling up, isn't it? The Common got to get this one right.
Absolutely. And it's so interesting. In almost every group we do, unlike, again, most Whitehall slogans, it has actually cut through. So the white paper out on Wednesday or Thursday, I don't think people will be poring over it like we might be, but what they do definitely want to see are some practical, tangible results by the time of the next election, and stuff that affects their everyday lives, not big, shiny infrastructure projects. In the group they talked about, can't they do up the local high street, do up some of the shops? They want real practical stuff which matters for their everyday.
And we shall see if they get it. Luke Tryl, the UK Director of More in Common. Thank you, and thanks so much for allowing us to sit in that focus group with Blackpool South voters. Good to talk to you, Luke.